Welcome to Conversations with Hannah. This morning I am joined by several people who look familiar and a few who probably don't. Congressman Jim McGovern, thank you for joining us. Jen Lemmerman, who is from the Project Bread, the Chief Policy Officer, and Jean McMurray, who is from the Worcester County Food Bank, the Executive Director there. Thank you for joining me this morning. I wanted to bring us together to talk about all the work that we are doing collectively to end hunger. I know everyone who's watching knows Jim McGovern like the back of their hand, so let me spend a minute on getting everyone familiar with who you both are. Jennifer, can you just tell us a little bit about your role and about Project Bread and the mission and how it impacts the work that we're doing here?
Sure, yeah. Project Bread is a statewide anti-hunger organization here in Massachusetts, so we work all across the state. And our vision and our mission is really a Massachusetts where hunger is permanently solved. And we take a dual approach. We like to think of it as a radical approach to ending hunger in Massachusetts that focuses both on policy change and the systems in place that perpetuate food insecurity, while also having programming that addresses food insecurity happening today. I'm the Chief Policy Officer here, so I work on the policy side,
Yep.
And we have both state, federal, and even local initiatives that are meant to address the barriers to food security for people in our state.
Well, and the work that you do personally and the work that Project Bread is instrumental in ending hunger here in the Commonwealth. And I've had the honor of working with you on many different initiatives. The most recent one that Project Bread was so successful on was the universal school meals being adopted. And so anyone watching who has children in the school system is probably very aware of that and the tremendous impact that that has had on reducing food insecurity levels here. And so we can talk about that in a little bit. And Jean, anyone driving by Route 9 going up the hill knows that the Worcester County Food Bank has long been home here. And you've been there for many years leading Worcester County Food Bank. Just tell us a little bit, for folks who might not be as familiar, the work that you do and how many people the food bank and the food bank serves.
Sure. So the mission and vision of the Worcester County Food Bank is to create a hunger-free community in Worcester County. There is no county, state in our country that's hunger-free, but we'd love to make that happen right here in Worcester County in Massachusetts. We're a very proud partner with Project Bread, but on a daily basis, the Worcester County Food Bank is committed to ending hunger in two ways. First is through the distribution of quality, fresh, frozen, and non-perishable food. Yeah. But we know that donated food is not going to solve hunger. So we also do a lot of advocacy around programs and policies that get at the root causes. Things like, a higher minimum wage, and things like the monthly child tax credit payments that really, help people to get out of poverty and be more food secure, be more economically secure. We have seen an incredible increase in the number of people needing our help. We've gone from helping an average of about 12,000 people a week to over 16,000 people per week. And I know we'll talk about that more, but and there's no end in sight. And that's very concerning. It's really very, very difficult for people out there.
It certainly is. And I was saying before we started that one of the things that I'm continually amazed about are people who are not impacted by food insecurity themselves have a lack of awareness about how prevalent it is here in the Commonwealth of all places. They think, no, it can't be that much of an issue here. And so one of the things that you are most well known for, among the many things, Congressman, is your work to end hunger. You are a champion of that. You've been unrelenting on that. And 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, September 2022, you were the compelling reason why the White House held the conference on ending hunger. And we were all privileged to be there. Thank you for including us as part of the group that was there. I, along with some of my colleagues who co-chair the food insecurity caucus that we have at the State House, attended. And when you came out on stage, you got a standing ovation from the thousands of people who were there, which was so well called for. Tell us a little bit about how you got this White House conference to happen, the second one only coming after the original one when President Nixon was in office.
Well, first of all, thank you for your leadership, Hannah, on these issues in the state legislature, and I'm happy to be here with Jean and Jen, and I admire their work as well. But the bottom line is to end hunger. It's about more than just providing, increased SNAP, or it's a lot of different things. You want to end hunger, then you have to provide people economic security. I mean, it's about decent jobs that pay decent wages. It's about making sure that the benefit you get actually covers the cost of food. It's about making sure our kids get fed. That's why I'm really grateful to Massachusetts and you in particular for championing the universal school meal program. I mean, we have my two sisters are teachers in the Worcester public school system. They tell me all the time about kids who come to school on Mondays who are hungry, who are looking for food to take home on Fridays. So this is incredibly important. But we need a holistic approach. We need to find ways to support our farmers. We need to find ways to make sure that food is more affordable for everybody. We need to make sure that it's available and accessible to people, because that's an issue. There's this whole other part of it, which is food is medicine.
Yeah.
If you are not able to get access to good, nutritious food, chances are you're going to have a whole bunch of health issues.
Correct.
And so this is a solvable problem. And so the whole point of the White House conference was to bring everybody together who may have a piece of this in terms of solving the problem. Bring them all together, including in the private sector, and let's all put what we can deliver on the table, and let's get this done. And we're making progress. I'm an impatient person. I know you are. We're all impatient, right? We want to move faster and quicker, but we're making progress. And we're talking about this issue in ways that we have not been. And so that gives me hope that we may get to that point where we can actually solve this problem. And as Jean pointed out, I mean, the problem is not getting better, it's getting worse. 44 million Americans, 44 million in this country, the richest country in the world, don't know where the next meal is going to come from. And, and a lot of them are working families. So this is a political condition. We can solve it, and we need to get about the business of doing that.
I agree. I think we all agree. And one of the things that I found most refreshing about this conference and being there was that it was bipartisan, right? This is one of those issues where there may be some policy level differences on how to get to the end point, but there is, and certainly here in Massachusetts, there's a bipartisan commitment to wanting to end hunger and figuring out how do we do that. Tell us about how you brought the White House conference to be, though, because I don't want to undersell or underplay the fact that you really were the reason that this happened.
So we started trying to push this idea of a White House conference. Again, this would be the second ever. The first one was in 1969. And that actually produced the WIC program and the modern day SNAP program. So good stuff came out of that first conference. We tried during the Obama administration and making appeals directly to various people in the administration. They started to focus on the issue, but we couldn't quite sell them on the idea of this massive nationwide conference. And then when Biden became president, we tried again. And then I came to realize the only way we're going to get this done is if I put it in legislation. And that's what we ended up doing. We mandated that they do this. We provided the funding to do it. And then we had the conference. And what has been impressive to me is all the follow-up that has occurred in the aftermath of the conference. So, look, I think I speak for everybody on this table. I mean, when you meet somebody who is food insecure, it breaks your heart. And there are people in our community who many of us don't even realize are food insecure. I mean, there's this stereotype that if you're hungry, you must be unhoused, you must be, must not have a job. The bottom line is that is true, but there's a whole bunch of people, who we see every day, when they drop their kids off to school, or we see them, when we walk down the street, who are working, who are finding themselves in a situation where they can't make ends meet and they're going without meals. And I believe that food ought to be viewed as a fundamental human right for everybody in this country and on this planet.
Well, and when we came back to Massachusetts, I think Massachusetts, credit to you, had the largest contingent of people at the White House conference. And, collectively, when we came back, we were all in on trying to figure out how does Massachusetts lead in ending hunger. Massachusetts has long been a leader in the work to end hunger. In fact, the only named, I think, initiative in the White House conference briefing book was the HIP program, the Healthy Incentives Program, and the work that we've done here on that. But we need to figure out how to do that. And fortunately, when we came back here, Project Bread convened a group of us that had been there, as well as people who represented the interests that we needed around the table, as you said, Congressman, to make sure everybody is part of this and solving this problem and committed to it. Tell us a little bit, Jen, about the process that Project Bread helped lead and the work that we're doing now.
Yeah, it's so exciting to see, as you said, Congressman, the follow-up to the conference, and the conference really was the kickoff here in Massachusetts. But as you mentioned, when you look at what came out of that conference and the national plan, which is an incredible roadmap for the country, Massachusetts is a leader here. And so we really needed to start where we were at as a state and say, how do we move forward and make progress here? And so all of these stakeholders who came to Washington for this conference and came home really energized and really excited to move this forward, really made the commitment that we're gonna make sure that this continues here and that Massachusetts becomes the first state to be hunger free and to draw that roadmap that makes sense for us. And so the result of that has been the Make Hunger History Coalition, which is made up. It started with an incredible steering committee of 20 members, all three of you who are members of that, which is wonderful. And it's organizations that are leading on major policy campaigns. It's individuals with lived experience. It's state legislators who have been committed to this issue and driving it forward. It's Congressman McGovern, who is our champion in Washington, members of the Healy administration. It's really all of the voices and the stakeholders coming together really for the first time ever in Massachusetts, that this group, this broad and committed a group, have come together to say, we're going to look at this holistically, and we're going to look at all of the things that feed into the situation that we're in here in Massachusetts, where food insecurity is being perpetuated. We are making incredible progress on individual issues like universal free school meals, but we're seeing the need continue at food banks, and we're seeing the rates remain high. And so we need to draw this roadmap together, and that's where we're at right now. We're in the process with the steering committee, with all of the experts around the table, the voices of lived experience, and a growing coalition. We have been sort of publicly, out there as the Make Hunger History Coalition for just a couple months now. We have over 130 organizations signed on to this coalition. We have over 100 individuals who said, I want to be a grassroots champion of this, and signed on to be a part of it. So there's really major excitement and momentum around it, but there's a lot of work ahead.
And you mentioned that this is the first time all of these folks have been pulled together, which is true at this level. But COVID forced us to do things a little bit differently. And when COVID hit, Governor Baker convened a food security task force that we were also on. And it really brought together government agencies who are out there doing the work, and advocacy organizations in the private sector together to say, what are we going to do? Now more people are food insecure than previous to the pandemic starting. And there were a lot of things that happened, including at the federal level, an increase in SNAP benefits, which ended, unfortunately, and has had an impact here on our food insecurity levels. But it did give us a taste of how to bring everyone together and try and cut across some of the barriers that had previously been existing. As we move forward on this plan, talk a little bit about how you envision it going. Like, where we're at today is still in the planning mode. We're doing the work with our consultants to come up with what is the plan, how do we get people to buy into it, how do we implement it. But do you see 2030 as still being the year that we collectively said we wanted to try and end hunger by?
Yeah, 2030, as you mentioned, was that reflects the Biden administration's plan, right? They have a goal of ending hunger by 2030, and that is something that this roadmap will have to, as it's drafted and finalized, we'll have to grapple with. What's the time frame for this? What is both bold and attainable? And so that's one of the conversations at the table. But I think one of the what we do know is that as this roadmap takes shape, eventually this will be something that will be a product that we can all work from together. And it's gonna take everybody doing it together. And so, I think what I envision, and I think what the steering committee has envisioned is to have working groups that are working on the issues that are laid out in the roadmap, that we can bring people together. So this is not going to be just a policy roadmap. It's not going to be a laundry list of policies to pass, although it will be rooted in the systems change that policy policy brings. It needs to be about movement building. It needs to be about how we talk about why people become food insecure. What are the conditions that have made it continue in our state? Looking at even how people are portrayed in the media who are accessing SNAP. And what does all of that mean? And how do we change that here? And so it's, again, a lot of work, but I think we have the right people and we'll continue to grow this coalition. And so we'll have working groups that are moving it forward. We'll have the steering committee continuing to be committed. We'll have shared metrics that we're all looking at as we move along. And, hopefully what we'll find is that we'll make progress and we'll be able to shift the roadmap, to reflect that.
And it's organized right now around sort of 5 pillars. Can you talk a little bit about what those pillars are?
Yeah. So you mentioned, Rep Kane, that we're working with consultants who are really taking a very comprehensive process to do stakeholder interviews with people who are in this space, with other coalitions on other issue areas, so that we can learn from how their coalitions have worked, people with lived experience, people who are not working on anti-hunger issues directly, but part of the root causes. So really as comprehensive as possible. And what's come out of those conversations and those interviews has really revealed some buckets, right, that need to be part of any comprehensive plan. And so the first, and this is something that the steering committee is working on and sort of building out the details around right now. The first is ensuring that residents can access and buy food. So it's about purchasing power. It's about those programs that allow people to buy food like SNAP. Are people able to access that? How can we streamline that? How can we make it more accessible? The second is adjusting food supports for targeted populations. We know that there are populations that are more susceptible to food insecurity, and the stats show that. So looking at children, universal free school meals has been an incredible leap forward, but how can we continue to make progress on that and make those meals more accessible to those kids? We're in the early stages of summer right now. We have summer EBT is an incredible step forward, thanks to the congressman. Kids have that and their families have that purchasing power. They also have access to school meal sites. And so are those meeting those children's needs? So looking at particular populations. The third is integrating food insecurity into the healthcare system. So the food is medicine, the congressman mentioned, is Massachusetts is an incredible leader in that space. How can we continue to move that forward? These are two systems that really interact with each other all the time. And so how are we making sure that they're supporting each other? The third is supporting nutritious and local eating. So how can people access that local food? How can we support the local economy and the local agriculture while getting people access to that healthy, nutritious food that they are looking for? And then the fifth is addressing the root causes that contribute to food insecurity. It's really critical to focus on the issue so that it's an attainable roadmap, but it's impossible to do that without recognizing all of the pieces that contribute to that. And that food insecurity, in turn, also contributes to, right? Food insecurity is both caused by and a driver of poverty. And so how do we address that as well?
Certainly, and living, in a higher cost state, right? I mean, our housing costs, transportation, food, all of those things also, as Jean mentioned, they contributed to that. And the Greater Boston Food Bank, with the other food banks, along with Mass General Brigham and supported by DESE and USDA funding, have looked the last 4 years at food insecurity here statewide in the Commonwealth and what's going on with it. And as we alluded to earlier, in some ways, we were able to make some inroads during the pandemic because we had some more tools. We had, with the Congressman championing it, some higher levels of SNAP benefits, which were deeply helpful. We had work in providing food to kids, especially in the summer, that piloted these programs. But Jean, now we are seeing the last couple of years, it continues to tick upward and upward. I think 34% right now statewide food insecurity levels. Tell us about what you're seeing in Worcester County in particular, what the need is.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we are seeing a dramatic increase, and it shouldn't be as a surprise to anyone because when we had those pandemic era policies and programs, we actually saw the numbers of people going to food pantries going down. So it really was like a pilot. See, we do know how to end hunger. And then as each of those programs, one after another, sunsetted, the numbers started to tick up. Slowly at first, but now, since the end of the SNAP extra allotments last April, even with the state-funded SNAP benefits for the additional 3 months, we have just seen a dramatic increase because we lost $12.4 million in those extra SNAP benefits. That impacted 79,000 families in Worcester County. Yeah. And as a food bank, there's no way that we could make up $12.4 million in SNAP benefits. We're distributing enough donated food every week for about 150,000 meals. But the need is even greater. I mean, our food distribution increased by 22%, but the need has gone up by about 31%. So you see that gap. Mm-hmm. That's why it's a moral imperative for us to be a part of the Make Hunger history, because we see it every day. We hear the voices, and when people call us, the stress, the anxiety. We see it in their faces when they come to the food bank. And I say the food bank, but I also mean our network of food pantries. They're the ones that are on the front line. And they are mostly all volunteers at faith-based communities. And what heroes and heroines, because I don't know how they can just get up every day and do it, but yet they are. And they'll continue to do it. That's the good news, that they're very dedicated and committed. But, people should not have to be going to a food pantry as much as they are. They shouldn't have to go to a food pantry ever. I really see that as a failure of policy every time a person goes to a food pantry. We're failing them. Programs and policies are not meeting people where they're at. And that was a big part of that newly released statewide report is, centering the voices and the experiences and the solutions that people with that experience can bring to the conversation. And that's why I think the Make Hunger History Coalition is so important and will be successful, because these people are leading this plan. Yeah.
We hosted the Food Systems Caucus, hosted last week a briefing with the Greater Boston Food Bank and Mass General Brigham to talk about the findings of the survey. And one of the things that caught my eye in there was a statement that if there was $60 more a week available, it would change the dynamic in a family in terms of. And when we look at universal school meals and the implementation of that, I believe it was approximately $1,200 a family saves per child by having access to universal school meals. So, my question back to them was, can you dig into that more? Like, can we see for families that did have that, how did it move the needle more? Because we need stats like that. We need that information to be like, what are the things that move the needle? And I think, for people who aren't familiar with it, that $1,200 that is now available per family, per child, to go used to buy food, for the larger family, is incredibly helpful. And it's not just about buying any food, right? Like the goal and the goal of the conference was the nutrition piece. It was hunger, health, and nutrition. Because we also, as you pointed out, Jen, the correlation between healthcare expenses and lack of access to food, nutritious food, is so high. So, Congressman, you're working at the federal level day in and day out on this issue. Tell us about some of the things that you're focused on. I know the Farm Bill was
right.
an area
Unfortunately, the Farm Bill that came out of the House of Representatives, at least out of the Ag Committee, cuts SNAP by $30 billion. So, in my opinion, we ought to defeat that.
When will that be up for?
Unclear.
Okay.
We may end up doing it 1-year extension, which would be better than a $30 billion cut. But as Jen mentioned, one of the things that I championed along with Speaker Emerita Pelosi a while ago was the summer EBT program. So hunger it gets worse in the summertime because kids are out of school. So this gives eligible families an extra $120 to be able to put food on the table, which I think will help immensely. And again, we also have to correct stereotypes and misperceptions. Low-income people and programs like SNAP have been demonized for a long, long time. The bottom line is the average SNAP benefit before the pandemic was about $1.40 per person per meal. That's it. Yeah. It went up to $2.40 with all the added benefits, and then some of these things expired, so now it's down to a little bit over $2 per person per meal. But we saw hunger start to decrease during the pandemic with that just added benefit, right? we should learn from that. Again, hunger is costly. When people are hungry, kids are hungry, they don't learn in school. When workers are hungry, they're less productive in the workplace. When people are food insecure, they end up relying on choices that are bad for them. Then there are all these medical costs that accumulate. So, the idea that somehow we're going to add to the deficit by trying to end hunger, it's the opposite. And we need to start, presenting people with the statistics about the savings that we can have. The other thing is, we have to, our systems have to change. We talk about food as medicine. Everybody gets it, but we need all of our hospitals and our, and even, how Medicare and Medicaid reimburse things. We need that to change, and it's really hard. Even when it makes sense, it's hard to get systems to change. We need to move in that direction. But this is a solvable problem, and I know you know this, Hannah, because you've been leading the effort in the state legislature. There are some problems I don't know how we solve. I mean, some things are so complicated that I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out. This isn't one of them. I mean, this is relatively simple if we support the initiatives that work, that have proven to work. And I think as a society, I think we all should want to be part of an effort to make sure that nobody in our community goes hungry. And this is all doable.
One of the things that we did here in Massachusetts, which was differed from sort of the national strategy, is, as you mentioned, Jen, we did adopt this idea of wanting to strengthen the local food system. One of the stats that sits in my head every day is that for every dollar a farmer invests, they only make 94 cents back. It is a very difficult proposition to be a local farmer. And yet we saw during, again, the pandemic, one of the biggest challenges that we had right off was the fact that, grocery stores stocked 24 to 48 hours worth of food, and so when we had supply chain issues immediately, we had access to food for everybody challenging. And so I really appreciated the fact that here we have focused on making sure that as we're doing this, we're strengthening the local food system and providing access to fresh, healthy, nutritious food, which has really been the success of the Healthy Incentives Program, which Massachusetts has long championed here, and we have funded at the state level after the initial pilot from the USDA. You have also spent a lot of time championing farms and farming issues, and tell us a little bit about sort of what you have seen too and why you think that this effort, and again, incredibly grateful that the pillar is there that is guiding this, but tell us about some of your work in that role.
One of the unfortunate things about the current Farm Bill working its way through Congress is that it has this approach to agriculture that either get bigger or get out. And I'm really concerned about that because that's more of a corporate approach to providing people food. I represent a district that has over 2,000 farms. They're small, they're medium-sized farms. These people are farming because this is what they love. Some of them could barely make ends meet. Some of them are on SNAP.
They are.
I mean, so I want to do everything we can to strengthen our local food systems, to get us all to basically purchase as much as we can from our local farmers, to strengthen our local economies, which I think is important. I'm also somebody who cares about climate change and about the environment. It's better for the environment as well, and it's a way to combat climate change, again, to support to create more sustainable local food systems. And again, it can't happen overnight, and we have to figure out a way to kind of transition to more local-oriented approach in terms of where we get our food from. But we all have, I think, to do a better job of supporting our local farmers. And for those who are watching who don't have to worry about whether they can put food on the table for their families, make an effort to support our local farms. They're everywhere. They're in Shrewsbury, Westborough. I mean, we can go, any city or town has a local farm. Let's support them. We want them here. And the food that they produce, I think, is better for you. It doesn't travel as far. It doesn't take up as much energy. And again, we're supporting our local economy.
Well, and I think that's what, again, differentiates Massachusetts. I know at the White House conference, there were breakout panels, and Senator Joe Comerford and I were sitting in one, and there was a gentleman from a state in the Midwest who probably has really, really large farms in the district. And he was talking about, in general, they had been able to get down to like a meal that could be served to somebody who's food insecure to like a dime. And Senator Cumberland, our mouths dropped because we're thinking, but that's not healthy. That's not, you know what I mean? You can't approach it from how do you provide this at the lowest possible cost, because there are trade-offs to that. That's not going to be a healthy meal. It's certainly not going to be supporting local ag. One of the things here in Massachusetts that we've done, I think, is recognize that it will take investments to do this. We're not just trying to do this in the cheapest possible way and declare victory and go home. It has to be sustainable. It has to be healthy. It has to be driven by people with lived experience to say this is how this best works for us. You can't have sort of policy coming down from a top that has no recognition of what it actually means to be needing access to more food. And so as we move forward, I think, again, part of the success of Massachusetts is because I think we're pretty well grounded in how to do this, which in a lot of states is a challenge because they don't have, entities who are already working together or this bipartisan approach to wanting to accomplish this. But it will take a lot of hard choices that we have to make, because resources are finite. And so as we move forward, I think our collective effort is to ensure that, with the congressman's leadership at the federal level, in the state legislature and with the Healy administration, as well as working together with all of our partners in advocacy organizations across the Commonwealth, that we don't lose sight of the long-term goal here. We're going to go through peaks and valleys of pulling together a plan, but I think we're all united in ending up with this vision where there will be some hunger that happens because things happen in people's lives, and the safety net needs to be strong, but it needs to be a quick safety net, one that helps people get back to, being able to on their own make choices around how to satisfy themselves and their families' food security. So I'm incredibly grateful for all of the work that all of you do. Somehow we're out of time.
Well, we're grateful for the work you do.
you.
We all talk about how great Massachusetts is as a model. It wouldn't be that case if it weren't for leaders like you in the state legislature, and so we're grateful for that.
I appreciate that. We have a great, the Food System Caucus in the legislature, as all of you know, 160 members out of the 200, really terrific people that I have the honor to work with, who are all committed to wanting to do this work together. So, but thank you all for all the work that you all each do towards ending hunger and everything else that you do. That's it for this episode of Conversations with Hannah. Join us again soon. Thank you.